Welcome back to Fighting Words. I'm Carissa Maxwell, joined as always by senior combat writer Andreas Hale and senior combat editor Tom Gray. David Benavidez put on an offensive clinic this Saturday, beating Demetrius Andrade, who was formerly unbeaten. Boo Boo essentially quit when he got to the corner because he could not take the power and, most importantly, the stamina that David Benavidez put forth in the ring. Watching that fight, I knew you guys were leaning towards Benavidez to win it. But what were your thoughts coming out of that fight on Saturday?
Thought it was a devastating performance by Benavidez. I didn't really have much doubt, Carissa, to be honest, on who was going to win. I did give Andrade a chance because of his skill level, the fact that he's a southpaw, but he had a lot of things going against him. He was much smaller and he's just been way too inactive. But like you say, the offensive effort that Benavidez put forth, he's just absolutely relentless. I thought it was a terrific display, and I think it piles a great deal of pressure on the man that I'm sure that we're going to be talking about in a while. But yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was brutal. I didn't give Andrade a shot, and I like Demetrius Andrade, but David Benavidez is a different kind of beast. And the biggest concern was, can Andrade do something to make Benavidez not go after him the way that he did? There was not enough pop behind the punches. He couldn't get away. David Benavidez covers space extraordinarily well. He cuts off the ring. This was another one of those performances that goes, damn, how much longer can Canelo avoid this guy? Because he is the most devastating force at 168 pounds. He's undefeated. He's 26 years old. And I thought he finished him late, and he finished him in round 6. What else does he have to do? That's what it left me with. What else does David Benavidez have to do to get Canelo? The only thing that's left that I can think of is have a bad performance to where Canelo thinks he'd have an advantage. Because if he keeps steamrolling opponents like this, I don't know if Canelo wants that smoke.
Andreas, do you think there's a possibility that Canelo is trying to get him I think he's tight at the weight, Benavidez. I don't know how much longer he's actually got at 168 pounds. Do you think it's maybe down to the fact that, you know what I'm saying? Like, if he can make Benavidez struggle on the scales, does his chances get better?
Yo, Tom, I don't know. But, like, the biggest concern is, as we talk about this, is it doesn't get any better for Canelo the longer he waits. Like, maybe he's going to try to wait him out and think that he's going to grow out of the division. But at 26 years old, Benavidez hasn't reached his physical prime yet. And if you're Canelo and you're trying to wait this man out, he's only getting better. I don't understand the strategy here. Floyd fought Canelo when Canelo was young, and then Canelo became Canelo. The best opportunity that Canelo had to fight Benavidez was when he was younger, not when he gets older. So if that's the strategy, it's a stupid one.
Obviously, we're going to talk about Canelo, and you already listed off, part of the resume of David Benavidez being 26-year-old, now being unbeaten, advancing his record to 28-0, 24 wins by knockout. He also retained the WBC interim super middleweight title belt. So to all of those points, yes, Canelo has to fight him. The question is, when is that going to happen? Andreas, you just laid out that, yeah, it should have been when it was younger, because now David Benavidez is more of a threat. But aside from putting Canelo's belts on the line, I think there's something that's an even larger talking point when it comes to David Benavidez facing Canelo Alvarez, if and when that fight does actually happen. And that is that David Benavidez has made it very, very clear he's coming for those Mexican holidays. He wants to be the face of Mexican boxing. And it's one of those things where it's up for debate when that fight does happen, who is going to retain that title. So the obvious answer for when we think this fight should happen would be May 4th, Cinco de Mayo weekend. Canelo always fights that weekend. It is the biggest Mexican holiday. But for everything you just said, Canelo has made a point of ducking Benavidez. So if this fight does not happen, which we all agree it should, there's no point in even debating it. Is there anything Canelo can do, anyone he can fight on May 4th other than David Benavidez to justify him remaining the face of Mexican boxing without actually fighting David Benavidez?
Because of the position that Canelo holds, he is now officially, and has been for years, boxing's diva, right? So he can do what he wants. What yourself and Andreas and I think is unacceptable to Canelo, it's just, it's water off a duck's back. He doesn't really care. He could literally fight someone. I think it's going to be Jamal Charlo. That's what I think is going to happen in May, and then possibly Benavidez in September. I honestly don't think it's going to happen in May. And maybe I've just became cynical the same way I did with Crawford and Spence and some other fights, but he can do what he wants. You know, we've seen fighters in his position. I can remember Oscar De La Hoya fighting Yuri Boy Campos. And as much as people laughed that fight off, he still got a good payday for it, and a lot of people turned up to watch him. So Canelo can do what he wants because of the position he holds. Do I think it'll happen in May? No, I don't.
Ugh. I don't know where to start. All right. One, nobody wants to see Canelo versus Charlo. After Jermell Charlo looked as terrible as he did, Jamal didn't look excellent against an undersized Jose Benavidez Jr. Like, Jamal looked good for having over a 2-year layoff, but not excellent to the point where you're demanding that fight. So if Canelo was to go that route, it's gross. It's not a great fight. The only person that truly stands in the way of this fight happening is Terrence Crawford. If somehow Terrence Crawford can manipulate his way out of the Spence fight, which I still think is going to happen, that's the only fight I can see as fans will be like, all right, that's acceptable. We'll take a Crawford-Canelo fight instead of the Benavidez fight. I can see that happening, but percentage-wise, it's very small, right? The other issue is Canelo fights on Cinco de Mayo weekend. If he fights whoever, when Mexican Independence Day comes, the UFC has just booked the Sphere in Las Vegas for Mexican Independence Day weekend for a major, major event, which means Canelo wouldn't have the luxury of no competition that particular weekend in Las Vegas. They'd have to take that fight somewhere else. Benavidez Canelo is a Vegas fight. So I feel like you kind of have to do it in May. The other issue is, if you're the WBC, yes, I know, Tom, WBC grants passes to anybody like Canelo. But my man just defended the interim title. As stupid as it sounds, he defended the interim title. He's undefeated. He's the number one contender by default. There's no reason that Benavidez Canelo shouldn't happen. I can't see another opponent that's justifiable. Jamal Charlo is a 160-pounder who fought at a catchweight and couldn't make the damn catchweight. I don't see how you justify Canelo defending all of his belts against anybody outside of Benavidez and maybe Crawford. Those are the only things that I see. Jamal Charlo should get him stripped, but it's the WBC. And Mauricio Suleiman, we know what you guys do over there. You'll find a way to justify it. Maybe pay David Benavidez some step-aside money, which I don't think he'll accept. Man, I just, for all boxing fans, Benavidez Canelo has to happen Cinco de Mayo weekend. You're just playing with fire otherwise. It's hotter than it's ever been. The other issue is, who the hell is Benavidez going to fight? If he's not fighting Canelo, who's he fighting at 168 pounds that anybody cares about? If Canelo were to fight Crawford, then Benavidez could beat up Charlo to get revenge for his brother. Maybe that works. But even then, it's like, there's only one fight we want. It's Canelo Benavidez. That's it. Quit playing with us. But boxing's going to do boxing and mess with us every time.
And you kind of already touched on this when it comes to age, but we've discussed Canelo's age and how he is edging towards the end of his career, being in his 30s compared to David Benavidez, who is 26. And at the start of the show, I said his stamina is really what made his performance stand out. He played with his food a little bit, and ultimately, Andrade, he was beat, he was tired, he was done. Is that stamina something that you think Canelo is most worried about? Because it doesn't matter, how strategic you are and how technical you be and the power of your punches, but if you can survive in the ring longer, that's really how you win. So is that stamina, do you think Canelo's biggest fear as to why he is probably avoiding making this fight happen, because he knows he does not have age and maybe agility on his side?
Age isn't on his side, and neither is wear and tear, as well as the age. I mean, he's still a young man per se, but it's the amount of fights he's had. He must be at 65, 66 fights. So 24 world title fights he's had, all those training camps, all of that wear and tear mounts up over time, and it could catch up with him in one night. And if there's one night that you don't want that to catch up, it's when you're in the ring with David Benavidez. I mean, that would be hell. I don't think Canelo is necessarily afraid of him or skeptical about anything. I think Canelo believes also that he hits harder than, say, an Andrade. It's okay walking a guy down. If Canelo is able to hit Benavidez real hard, flush, on target areas, right on the chin, flush in the temple, right in the body, then we'll see if Benavidez can walk through that kind of fire. I don't know what Andreas thinks, but I do not believe that Andrade hits harder than Canelo. And I think Canelo has got the potential, if he's putting full weight on his punches, to make Benavidez possibly think about the forward march.
All right, so I want to start with something. The D word, the dreaded D word. There's two words in boxing that are overused way too much: robbery and duck, right? People use them all the time. They're almost interchangeable. If somebody doesn't fight somebody, they automatically call it a duck. However, in this case, if Canelo doesn't fight Benavidez, it's a duck. That's all. I can't find it. He's not scared of him. He's not fearful of him. But for whatever reason, you're avoiding fighting this man. It's a duck. Is it a concern that David Benavidez has stamina? Of course it is. It's 12 rounds. Canelo knows what he sees. Canelo should also know who he is. It may not even be as much as a Canelo concern as it is an Eddie Reynoso concern of what he sees out of David Benavidez. Canelo's output, I've said this on multiple shows, his output has dwindled year over year. He punches less and less and less. And the power, while it's still there, it's not life-altering. This is a David Benavidez who I remember was sparring with Kelly Pavlik and Gennady Golovkin as a 15-year-old. And I was hearing stories about nobody could knock him down. I'm not saying Canelo can't hurt him, but I find it hard to believe that Canelo would believe in his power that much that he could stop that freight train from running him over. There are a lot of concerns in the Canelo camp about this particular fight, and they're pushing it off as long as they can. And to Tom's point, maybe it is a weight issue. You got to find an advantage of a 26-year-old that he can't have in that fight. Floyd weight drained him. But I don't know if you could weight drain Benavidez. He's a lifelong 68-pounder. I don't know what we're waiting on and what we're doing and what advantage Canelo has. If you book the fight today for Cinco de Mayo, I think Canelo loses, and pretty handily, because he gets outworked. You think the Bivol fight was bad. This kind of pressure that Canelo would have to deal with. And then on top of that, if you remember Gennady Golovkin versus Canelo, and everybody was like, well, Gennady fights real Mexican style and Canelo doesn't. Imagine what the fans are going to say heading into this fight, because David Benavidez is Mexican style through and through. I think right now, Canelo's not scared of him, but his team is actively ducking him for all the reasons that we mentioned: youth, power, age. Like, you can't even use the argument that he brings nothing to the table, because he does. I was in the Mandalay Bay, and it wasn't a sold-out crowd. It sucks. You fight on Thanksgiving weekend. It's a difficult fight to sell out. However, the following that David Benavidez had was strong. There's no reason to avoid this fight any longer unless you are actively ducking him. Canelo is ducking David Benavidez.
And to your point, Andreas, I think what you said there is spot on. His output has dropped significantly. I'd say probably since the second Golovkin fight. And if you look at him against John Ryder or against Jermell Charlo, he wasn't punching nearly enough to keep a fighter like Benavidez off him.
No, and the thing is, Tom, he tries to pick his spots, right? Like, Canelo does a good job of that, finding openings, counterpunching, picking spots, going to the body. David Benavidez doesn't allow you to pick your spots. You can barely breathe against this man when he starts getting going. It took him about 2 rounds to figure out that Andrade had nothing for him, so I'm just going to march him down. And again, the real important thing is how well he covers space. David's not a small guy. He's a gigantic 168-pounder with length, height, and remarkable hand speed. These are all issues that Canelo's going to have trouble finding holes and windows to counterpunch. Everything, this lines up all bad for Canelo, and his team knows it, and maybe he knows it too. So again, he's ducking this man.
Well, let's move on to some other Mexican fighters who are fighting this weekend. We've got Ryan Garcia, who is going to be making his return to the ring since his loss to Gervonta Davis back in April. And he is coming back as a super lightweight to fight Oscar Duarte on December 2nd in San Antonio on DAZN. Now, Ryan, he suffered a insane body punch that at the moment didn't seem very, climactic, but in hindsight, looking at that, we could really tell that weight loss, that very controversial rehydration clause, all of the things that factored into him fighting at that catch weight against Tank really affected his performance in the ring. So now coming back fighting at super lightweight and joining this weight class, how do you think he's going to fare in this fight against Oscar Duarte?
Personally, I don't necessarily think only the weight loss contributed to his performance against Tank. I believe that his tactical approach, particularly in the second round when he was throwing punches at him as if Tank was a novice, got him knocked down and pretty much changed the course of the fight. And that Tank was a worthy winner. But to answer your point, Duarte, I don't know too much about him. I've had a look at the resume, but he's got 21 knockouts and 26 wins. So that means that he can certainly punch his weight. Sometimes these unheralded Mexican assignments can go wrong. And we've seen it with Josh Warrington and Maurizio Lara. Lara at the time was not unknown, but he was undistinguished compared to Josh Warrington. So Ryan Garcia needs to have his wits about him because, this kid can obviously fight. When you look at the time in their careers they're at, it should be a Garcia win. When you look at the tools that Garcia has got, the hand speed and the power, it should be a Garcia win. But it's a potential banana peel. And at 140 pounds, these guys hit harder. So you're wearing small gloves, you're getting hit by a puncher, needs to watch himself for sure.
Yeah, I think there should be some cause for concern. A lot of people are going to be watching him defensively. Like, what does Ryan Garcia change defensively? He has a nasty habit of keeping his chin high. He has a nasty habit of not bringing his left hand back when he throws a hook. He's got bad habits that need to be corrected. I don't know if they're going to be corrected. Him jumping camp so much also concerns me because I wonder who's getting through to Ryan Garcia. Because is it a case of, this doesn't fit, or is he hearing things he doesn't want to hear in his moving camps? If the latter is the case, well, there's holes that can get exposed at 140 pounds. It's not like 140 pounds is full of tomato cans. Regis Prograis, Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez. Like, you go down the list of these 140 pounders, who can crack? Ryan can't just rely on offense alone. He has to become a boxer. And Duarte is a perfect opponent where he can try to show off a few things, but if he's not careful, he can get caught like he did against Luke Campbell and hit the canvas. And if that happens, well, then the stock takes another hit because at some point, we can't rely on the social media aspect. Even though Ryan Garcia says, I'm a boxer, I'm focused on boxing, you're a star because of your social media. You have to fill that void of becoming a boxer and not in a complete boxer, not just a social media boxer, not just a guy who can get highlight knockouts and throw punches really fast, but you need to complete. There is a hole in this circle right now that Duarte could take advantage of if Ryan is not careful. It's a banana peel, to Tom's point. It is a banana peel. If you're not careful, you're going to slip and fall, or you're going to get exposed and you're going to be food for the next 140-pound fighter. But I think Ryan should win this fight. His offense is fantastic, but he's just got to work on that defensive end, and that is truly problematic. And mentally, I'm very concerned when you take a knockout like that, the way you came out like a house of fire, trying to finish off an opponent that you had no business trying to finish off within 2 rounds. I wonder psychologically, does he come in with that same strategy to try to get his ego back intact, or does he stay within himself and actually box to try to get some rounds in? I want to see what he has to do.
And to your point, Andreas, if he wasn't listening to Joe Goosen, who I think is one of the best boxing minds in the world, it makes you wonder if he's going to be listening to Derek James.
Yeah, I don't know. And Derek James has so much going on. And the other thing is Derek James is like, he's riding a losing streak, right? Like, it hasn't been great. Jermell Charlo and Errol Spence both got beaten down. So you got to focus on Ryan and get him a win. So this is just as important for Derek James as it is Ryan Garcia.
Well, and it's not even just camp turnover that Ryan Garcia has been dealing with. It's no secret that there's a lot of politics and big business when it comes to boxing. And it's also no secret that there has been some contention between Ryan Garcia and Golden Boy Promotions, specifically Oscar De La Hoya, who did not even show up for the post-fight presser when he lost to Tank. And they've been kind of vocal about it on social media. It's not a feud that they've been shy about. Do you think that that tension between boxer promoter and on top of the turnover and the loss, do you think that that is going to have an impact not only mentally, but just with his performance moving forward?
From what I've seen, I think they've buried the hatchet to a degree. I mean, you need to heading into a fight. A loss to this kid would be catastrophic for his career. I mean, catastrophic, conceivably career-ending. That's how bad it would be if he follows up with a loss here. But it shouldn't if he's the type of fighter that can put all these problems behind him. We know how Tyson Fury, for example, he's had problems in his career. He's had terrible training camps, but he's come out and done the business. If you've got feuds with your promoter, it's not your promoter you're trading fists with. It's the guy in front of you. So Ryan Garcia should be disciplined enough, mentally strong enough to go in here and take care of business where it matters most.
Yeah, I agree. The very public feud with Oscar De La Hoya is something he's going to have to put behind him. It's not going to change anytime soon. That is your promoter. Even though Oscar does some questionable things on social media, he calls for questionable fights. He says ridiculous things from time to time. That's still your promoter. No matter what happens, your job is to win. And if you can't win, then Oscar has nothing to promote. And then both of you guys are kind of screwed because Golden Boy really doesn't have anybody. They got Virgil Ortiz, who's finally getting back in the ring in January. But outside of that, everything Golden Boy has hinges on Ryan Garcia. So they both better make amends of any issues that they have and make sure that Ryan performs. And hopefully Oscar and Ryan, because Oscar was in a similar situation that Ryan was when he was fighting. Like Oscar was the pretty boy. People were very critical of him. But Oscar proved he'd fight anybody. Ryan has that same chutzpah about it. Like he'll fight anybody. But Oscar's got to temper him a little bit. They need to have a better relationship overall. I don't think it'll do anything in this particular fight, one way or the other. But as the future rolls on, they have way too much in common for them to be feuding publicly about anything. If Oscar has an opportunity to truly make this kid a star, but he should also be in the gym with him, just talking to him mentally about avoiding the pitfalls that he avoided. There should be a mentorship here. And I don't see that for whatever reason. They need to fix it, and it all could start on December 2nd after Ryan Garcia perceivably takes out Oscar Duarte.
Well, we'll see what happens in San Antonio on DAZN on December 2nd. And as far as Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez, well, the ball is in Canelo's court, and we're just going to have to continue to wait to see if there are any moves made with that matchup. And we will be looking forward to discussing and debating it if and when that happens. But in the meantime, thanks for watching Fighting Words. I'm Carissa Maxwell for Andreas, Hale, and Tom Gray. We'll see you back next week.